great friends, on a Friday afternoon while the Padres are underway and playing. We wanted to delve into something else that's been a very interesting storyline here this past week. Landon Donovan has taken it to another level. When we did our summit with Landon Donovan and former police chief Shelley Zimmerman and Howard Wright, and when we put that whole group of people together, and am I missing anybody that was on that panel? It was Landon. You know, Landon was serious about, hey, we're going to work as an organization to end all of this hatred and to take this stuff seriously and not just let it flush with the news cycle, you know? So here's Landon Donovan from the San Diego Loyal to explain what happened to his team this week and why they walked off the field and chose to stop playing. Here's Landon Donovan. Hey, LD, what's up?
How are you, Scott?
I'm actually good. I'm healthy, and my kids are healthy. So all things considered, man, it's there's a lot of other people out there that got stuff to worry about. I'm just here messing around. How are you?
Amen. Yeah, it's been a rough week. However, I keep it in context. It's not something I have to deal with personally every day, like people of color or people of different sexual persuasion. So it's been tough for us.
Let's talk about what happened. Let's go through what happened here. Just let's start off with what people saw. There's a match you guys are playing in, and you'll have to explain the story in greater detail, but here, high level. Your player is insulted by a negative, nasty slur for a gay person in another language, as I understood it. So they said something, and you guys heard it, and what happened? Can you kind of give us the more detail?
Sure.
I'm leading off.
Yeah, so just before halftime, we had a free kick at the top of the penalty area, and one of our players, who is openly gay, got into sort of a back and forth with one of their players, and the other player kept escalating it. So eventually it got to the point where the player called him in Jamaican, a phrase that I've heard many times in my life because I've spent a lot of time in the Caribbean around Jamaican players, other Caribbean players. That is in essence the derogatory word for gay that we've used in this society for a long time, that you can deduce what it is.
The F word.
That's right. And so after we scored the goal, our player went back and told the referee what had happened. And the referee, I think in the confusion, thought that our player was calling him gay, the referee gay. So he gave him a red card, and that's sort of when the madness ensued, because our player he came over to the sideline and explained to the referee on the sideline what had happened. And that's when I heard him talking about it. And then given the context of what happened last week, where one of our black players was called the N-word, I couldn't help but react and stick up for my player in that moment.
I must say that's the first time I've heard this part of the story where your player gets kicked off the field because the referee thinks that your player is calling him a name. So ultimately, though, the video that I saw was you and the opposing coach. And you were saying to the opposing coach, we're not going to play if your players are going to be using that language against our players. And at one point, the opposing coach from Phoenix says, have you ever played soccer before? And you kind of walked away with your head or your head in your hands like, yeah, I've played a little soccer in my day. Why is this? You'll have to explain it to people.
Yeah.
Isn't this part of the game? Guys calling each other names, people denigrating one another on the field, using whatever they can to get into somebody's head? You tell us.
Yeah, so obviously you've played, Scott, and you know there's a line you don't cross. And the player was actually using other pretty nasty phrases that we don't need to repeat, but that haven't come to light either. There is a line you don't cross, and especially to an openly gay player, you don't call him the F word in your native language. That is a line that we can't have crossed. And I think the main point of all of this is players make mistakes. In the heat of the battle, people say stupid things. I get that. And the player, we can forgive in the moment for making a dumb mistake. But I think the point of why we needed to stop is exactly what the coach said. He said to me, Landon, how long have you been playing? This is just part of the game. And I think that was the point. The point is it's not part of the game. It does not have to be part of the game. And if it was just words, and Colin Martin and Elijah Martin, the two players that this happened to, would also say, listen, I'm fine. Like, they're just words. I can deal with it. The problem is they know, and they've said to me, the problem is those words create behavior patterns that can lead to violence and worse. And we see that. We see that on a daily and weekly basis. And so you have to start changing the narrative to say that this is not okay. This is not an okay way to treat another human being.
And ultimately, didn't Phoenix kind of side with you guys? Because I think the fallout isn't the coach and player now on leave of absences?
They are. And my point to this, Alex, is that the player, of course, needs to be held accountable. That's for sure. I think the way you really get this out of sports, though, is you got to hold the clubs accountable. So imagine if, let's just use the Padres as an example. Imagine if the Padres today, it's 1-1 in their series, they're playing for a chance at the NL or to move on in the playoffs, and someone on their team calls someone a homophobic slur. Imagine if the punishment is not that the player gets suspended 5 games, not that there's a fine, but that if they have to forfeit the game immediately. Imagine what happens now, right? And all the money and everything involved in that one slur. Then in preseason, in training camp, in spring training, I can promise you they would be talking about this constantly because they wouldn't want to lose a match, right? Or lose a game, in their case. So I think you have to punish the club so that there's real incentive for them not to allow this kind of behavior. And oh, by the way, you'll recruit differently, right? If you know a player has that history, you'll say, you know what, he's not worth it because we might lose our season over him. And I think that's how you make real change.
Landon, I've always been a huge believer that language and action creates culture. I've always believed that.
Amen.
To get that language out is very important because you're trying to change the culture. I thought what you did was the perfect thing to do in the time that we live in, because what you're trying to do is be the action you want to see. So if you feel a certain way, but when it happens to you, you don't take the steps that you feel like everyone should do when this happens, what are you really saying? And the fact that you guys stood behind what you believe in at a very critical time for you, I thought that showed more about what you're about and what you're trying to make this league and what you're trying to make your game into.
Well, thank you for saying that. And listen, our league all year has kneeled for 15 seconds before every game to say we will not stand this kind of behavior. Now, obviously, that's geared toward racism, but this kind of behavior is not acceptable. So if we're going to do that and we're going to wear armbands, we're wearing a Pride rainbow-colored armband in all of June, right? Like, so if you're going to go through these gestures and say you care, but then in the moment you just sweep it under the rug, you're just a hypocrite.
Right.
That's all you are. And
okay, so
I'm really proud of our guys.
So let me ask this question, because I think everybody listening right now and everybody watching right now will say, wow, Landon, that's really amazing. You, like John said, you guys have a belief. You guys want to build your team a certain way, and you guys put your money where your mouth was, because most people don't walk off the field when they hear a racial or a slur of any kind. They just don't do it. Oh, well, part of the game. That's the way it goes. You guys have decided you want to be part of real change. Here's the ultimate question. Why? Why so passionate about this issue versus that's the way the game's been played. Let's just keep playing it. Why? Why are you so passionate?
I'll tell you why, Scott. And for people who were sitting on their couch, maybe watching the game, or people have seen the videos, you can feel one way about it. But I look in Elijah Martin's eyes every day. I'm with him for 6 hours a day. I have seen the man suffer so much over the last week because a racist slur was lobbed his way. I've cried with him, hand in hand, arm in arm. Emotionally, it hit me, it hit our players hard, and it's real life for him. I watched Colin with his hand like this over his head Wednesday night for 30 minutes. Because let's not forget, not only is he dealing with someone saying that to him, not only is he dealing with a coach saying this is just part of the game, he's also dealing with the fact that because this all happened, we don't get a chance to make the playoffs. So he actually feels guilty. he felt guilty about, like someone who gets abused. It's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have spoken too much. That's why I deserve to get beat. Well, no, that's not the case. And that's why it's so important, because these are real life human stories. This isn't just an idea or a movement or an armband or a kneeling. This is real life human beings who are being impacted by this. And for me, as someone who sees myself as a father figure in their life, there is no chance I'm going to stand for that. Not Wednesday, not ever.
So going back to what you said with and ultimately what you want to see is maybe you should forfeit the game. You should not be awarded points in your scenario. You tried to do that in the Galaxy match. It hasn't really happened yet to get that point away from you or whatever. You guys are the one that forfeited the last game. You guys are the one that suffered the consequences. What has USL said about what's happening? Because if the league is taking 15-second kneeling, then where's their action to their words?
Yeah, I mean, I learned quickly last week that I don't control that. I spoke very clearly to the league about how I feel and how I feel they should act, but that's not my decision, right? And so what we realized, and this is the same thing, Alex, that happened the other night. At halftime, I went over to the referee and I said, if you give him a red card and remove him from the match, we will play. He said, I can't do that because I don't understand the phrase. I don't know what it means, and I don't feel comfortable sending him off. And I said, that's totally fair. I'm telling you what the phrase means. You don't have to believe me, but that's fair if you don't feel that way. I walked over to their coach and I said, Rick, as long as you sub him off the field so we know you are actually taking action, we will play the game. But otherwise, we're not. This is to your point. We can't control what other people do, but if they're not willing to take action, we are going to take action. And our biggest regret in the week before, when we heard the racial slur, 2 of our players heard it, is that we didn't say something in the moment. We waited till after, and we weren't going to do that again.
The biggest thing.
I just have one quick question, real quick, John, real quick. Is it against the rules? Like, in other words, does a player get kicked out of a soccer match because he or she says something nasty to another player?
I don't know the exact wording, but many players have been thrown out of a match for saying something to an official. That happens in all sports, right? Like a baseball.
But what about player to player?
I think I don't know the exact rule. I don't know the wording of the rule, but anything like that, if it's not already, should be an automatic red card. But I think the referee has full discretion to give a red card there.
All right, got it. Browner, jump in here, man.
Finding advocates for whether it be social injustice or fears or just hate amongst people is always key when you're trying to wipe out things like what you guys are facing. I think for you to tell people the emotions that you have gone through with these people suffering, I think that's important for people to hear, because a lot of times you're right. It is just an armband or it is just a kneel down. So it becomes these gestures and people forget about the actions that led to these gestures. And I'm glad that you were there to, in the moment, to stop everything, to hit the brakes on a moving train and go, no. We need to address this now. And you made that known. And again, you cannot be given enough kudos for that, because a lot of coaches would not have done that.
Mm.
Well, I appreciate that. But in the end, really, our guys decided to do it, right? I can give my advice, but they have to decide, and their careers are at stake. They all have playoff bonuses, right? And for these guys, that's real money. And they still decided in the moment that they wanted to do what's right and stand up for their teammates. So I appreciate that, but those guys are the ones who deserve the credit.
Did you guys just set a precedent going forward for yourself? Because and I don't know if this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but if the league is not going to take actual action against this happening, and you guys are taking a stance like, if this happens, we're not playing, can a team just like start calling names and nothing's going to happen to them, and you guys are going to like walk off the field every time?
If that's what it takes, Alex, then we will. The whole point in all of this is that this is bigger than competition. This is bigger than sports. And I'll tell you what, nobody's more competitive than I am when we're on the field. I mean, if you guys are ever there, you hear me yelling the whole time. I'm really into it, and I want to win. And I wanted to win. We were beating one of the best teams in the league 3-1 at halftime. That doesn't, not many teams do that. I want to win. But at the end of the day, if it means forfeiting points to continue to get the point across, then the other team can have the points, the league can have the points. other team can have the playoffs, they can have the champion. It doesn't matter. Like, this is bigger. This is bigger. And you don't do it because of a response you're going to get, but the way that people have reached out, individual people I didn't know were gay, have reached out to me and said, hey, thank you for standing up for me. Thank you for standing up for us. And that is way more important than 3 points in a soccer game.
Yeah, I think, it's amazing. We're talking to Landon Donovan this afternoon. And again, I agree. I think no coaches would do this. Could you imagine Bill Belichick pulling the Patriots off the field? They're like, hey, that guy said something to that guy and I didn't like it and it's insulting. We're not playing. Or, John, who was it in the NBA? Remember during the NBA bubble, there was the
Montrezl Harrell and Luka Doncic.
Yeah, where they called him like a bitch-ass white boy or something like that. Could you imagine, Landon, if a coach went, whoa, hey, hold on a second here. He just called him a bitch-ass white boy. You either take him out of the game or boom, we're gone. Nobody would do that. So to really make change, you got to Michael Jackson it, man. You got to start with the man in the mirror. Yeah,
I think so. And it's easy for me to say now that we've been through it that I would pull my player off the field because I know. I don't blame the coach against the LA Galaxy when the racial slur happened because he heard it. He admitted to hearing it, but he hasn't been in that situation. So I don't agree that he didn't pull the guy off the field, but I can understand. The problem is after the fact to deny it, which they've been doing, the comment that this is all part of the game, that just shows that there's something deeper here that needs to be stood up for.
I think you're being way too kind to the other coach. I get the player. Like you said, in the heat of the moment, guys are pushing. These are grown men competing at a high level at a professional sport for money. So it's a real deal. You're feeding people off of your ability. So I get that things get heated. From a coaching perspective, you're supposed to be the level-headed one. You're supposed to be the cool one. Most importantly, you're supposed to be the one that leads by example. So he should have pulled this player over and say, hey, did you say this? And if the guy says, yeah, I said it, then you go, hey, man, you got to sit down. You apologize, and you hope that the game can go forward. For an organization to then say they didn't say it when apparently it's clear that they did, I think you're letting them off entirely too easy.
Well, I think what you said would have been the appropriate response, right? Because if my player was accused of that, I would pull him over, and your players well enough. Yeah. You look them in the eye, whether they're lying. It's like your kids, right, Scott? Like, if they're lying or not. You look them in the eye, and if they're lying. So I would have said, did you say that? And if I could tell they were lying or if they admitted to it, then you pull them off the field. I think that would have been an appropriate reaction. I agree.
I think that, guys get pulled off the field all the time. You get a bad penalty, coach pulls you over and goes, hey, man, we can't have you on the field right now when you're playing like that. Yeah. And if you said something that is, really so bad, you say, hey, you're getting out of control out there. It's just, again, most people just they don't care. They just don't care. That's why the coach from LA didn't pull his player off the field. I don't care. I'm trying to win.
But the difference, Scott, is that he didn't see his player in pain, right? So afterwards, he probably saw his player in pain because he got his contract terminated, and he probably had to sit with that young man as he's bawling because his career might be over. And the same with Phoenix. Now he sees his player in real pain because of this. And now I promise you his reaction will be different.
Yeah. Hey, Landon, I know a lot of people really appreciate what you're doing out there. Whether it's, people who are gay, people who are black, people who are, underserved in any community, or people who are, there's prejudice against them for whatever reason. Again, religion, race, sexual preference. It takes somebody to stand up. It's really amazing what you did. So congratulations to you and the San Diego Loyal.
I appreciate it. I want to keep it all in perspective. I'm not the one who has to deal with this on a daily basis, right? These young men do. Elijah, who's a black man, has to deal with it. He told me he's been dealing with it his whole life. Colin's been dealing with this his whole life as a gay man. So just want to keep it in perspective. It's certainly not enjoyable, but those are the guys who are really in pain and need a lot of love.
Yeah. Again, it'd be so easy to be like, hey, we're not Major League Soccer. We're not the Premier League. We're this, smaller league. What does it matter? No one's going to pay attention to us. Wrong. They have. You're on Good Morning America this morning. That's incredible.
Yeah, I wish it weren't under these circumstances, but
what an inaugural season it was for the San Diego Loyal, huh, man? Like,
Crazy,
you go
man.
from COVID to shutdown to no fans in the stands to this. It's just been.
I know.
You can't even write this up. You can't make this up, man.
Dude, that opening night, there was so much electricity. There was so much excitement. I've never seen that stadium more packed than that opening night, and it seems like it was 10 years ago.
I know. I texted with some former coaches and former teammates who are now coaches. And I said, guys, you guys never told me it was going to be like this.
Yeah. In the last 3 years, you found out what it is to deal with politics in San Diego and manage a club. I mean, my goodness, what are you doing? Like, enjoy retirement. You worked your ass off your whole life.
Idiot.
Hey, Landon, be well, man. Thank you very much for doing this for us.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks for bringing Mike to it.